So now it is my great pleasure to introduce our next panel. And it's going to be Rabbi Laura Teller, who is going to be bringing together people to talk about the topic of Judaism, Jewishness, and active aging. Laura, over to you and welcome.
I'm delighted to, hold on. I'm delighted to be the organizer of this panel, particularly in the light of the challenges that we heard, the very provocative challenges that we heard this morning. What does Jewish tradition actually offer us? What is, the challenge of this morning, I think we will be dealing directly with at this moment. I want to begin by reminding you that Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel famously said, "Age is no guarantee for wisdom." People are anxious to store up financial means for when they grow older. They should also be anxious to prepare a spiritual income for growing older. That ancient Jewish principle, "Listen to the voice of the old," becomes meaningless when those growing older have nothing meaningful to say. So this panel will address that spiritual income, the search for meaning and purpose, and then we'll offer a few Jewish tools to help us pay attention to what matters most as we grow older. The focus of the panel is not what programs we should be offering, but rather why all this matters and why we believe that people can find direction in Jewish experience. The panelists include Rabbi Amichai Lau-Lavie of Lab Shul and Rabbi Ed Feinstein of Valley Beth Shalom. Each of them will speak for about 10 minutes. And then we'll hear some very brief descriptions of two important new projects that offer us all some terrific opportunities. First, from Eileen Levinson, the founder and executive director of ReCustom, a nonprofit design lab using technology and new media to imagine new formats for engaging with timeless Jewish tradition. And second, Amy Bebchck, the Chief Program Officer for OneTable. As you listen, if questions or comments come up, please post them in the chat. We won't actually have an opportunity to respond to the questions now, but as you know, the Active Aging Network will save the chat and at some point put these questions on the network website so we can encourage small group gatherings to reflect on them. So first, I'd like to invite Amichai Lau-Lavie, Rabbi Amichai Lau-Lavie, who actually needs no introduction, but if you want to know more about him, check out the conference website for his bio. So Amichai, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Laura. Thank you for hosting and holding the space. To my friend Stuart and by David and all of you who are really holding the space for this active aging day and movement. It's been a very moving day. I think Ken's charge this morning to the Jewish community to take a more central role in leading this radical moment with imaginative thinking was rousing. And it's really a privilege to be part of this conversation at this moment. I know some of you have been trailblazers and thinking ahead for many years on this, and I'm honored to have joined this focus in recent years. I turned 54 recently, so I'm in my middle essence. And throughout my work with storytelling and with Lab Shul, the understanding that coming of age at any life stage is a rite of passage, is an invitation. And I'm playing with the notion of human rites of passages and human rights to take the time to mark our transitions from one phase into the other. Certainly, as we already know and learned this morning, these are unprecedented times as far as the longevity and the ability to really focus not just on aging well, but becoming the elders who help the world, the communities do better and be better. So I want to I'll start with a very small anecdote about the spiritual eldering that I'm interested in some of the work that we've been doing. I was upstate this past weekend visiting some friends, and I met for coffee with a gentleman who turned 80 a few months ago, Jewish, but culturally Jewish, not really involved too much in the Jewish community, attends the Lab Shul High Holy Days. And I asked him, how did you mark 80? And he said, yeah, we had a party. But I said, no, but how did you mark 80? What was the sense of a spiritual marking? This is not a person who's technically religious, but is very spiritual. He said, well, you know what? I was on the golf course on my 80th birthday with my son, and I shot a really good game. And my father taught me golf. And my father died on the golf course at 94. So, there I was on the golf course. I learned how to golf from my dad. I'm now golfing with my son. And that felt like a spiritual transition. I was so moved. He is now committed to initiate me into golf at some point this summer. No commitments. But the conversation with this gentleman turned to, how do we turn to the ancient wisdoms we inherited? What do we have in our toolboxes to help us think about rites of passage, about aging, about eldering, about taking what we inherited, make sense of it and handing it over? And what of this ancient tradition, whether it's Jewish or other spiritual traditions, whether it's artistic, whether it's spiritual, in whatever way, do we get to DIY? How do we get to mix and match and make things work for today? And so this conversation about golf, that on the one hand is nothing to do with Judaism, we're talking about 3 generations of Jewish men who found a way to mark meaning in some way. And for this guy, now with his son, he called him after and said, I didn't think that there was a spiritual moment when we played golf, but now I think it is, and let's talk more about it. It's never too late to imbue these threshold moments with meaning. And as he said, to shoot your age at any age. I'm using this story as an anecdote because since I've started doing this work about 4 years ago, it's everywhere. The questions are everywhere. The invitations are everywhere. The opportunities to mark meaning in a really magnificent way. That helps us not only move from teen to adult to older adult to middle essence to elder. I'm interested in the journey where we ask the questions of eldering and aging, and I'm interested in the ceremonies or in reinventing the rituals. And I want to share with you what I've been attempting to do with guidance from friends and teachers along the way, Stuart being one of them as a leader in the Lab Shul community here in New York, bringing a lot of the wisdom that you got with B3 and other communities and the work with Rabbi Laura, and thinking together, how do we address the needs of people in our community who are middle essence, growing older, and becoming elders? And we went back and looked at what we already have in our tradition, which is also been discussed quite often today, the what we call the B mitzvah ceremony, right? The B mitzvah, so it's gender neutral, bar ba nay. Jewish tradition for the last 1,000 years has marked 13 as the way to enter adulthood. We know that's no longer the case today. At 13, I got my youngest about to go through that journey. At best, we got adolescence, but it's a marking. It's a marking of a move from one phase of life towards the next. And Jewish tradition traditionally did it just for men, and it wasn't a big hoo-ha, but it was a marking of a transition. Over the last century, the bar bat mitzvah thing is both a huge thing and also a complex challenge, I would say. I think many of us know that it's a lot about the party and not so much about the meaning making. And there are a lot of different efforts to make it more meaningful. At Lab Shul, what we've been doing over the years is inviting young people and their families to be in an intergenerational conversation about heritage, about legacy, and about storytelling. We use the storytelling methodology to empower these young people to become storytellers, to look at the story of Torah, not necessarily chanted in Hebrew. I'm not sure that's the most useful tool for young people in the 21st century, but to be critical thinkers, to talk back to our tradition, to question their family tree, to go all the way back to the beginning, and then to become a storyteller as a rite of passage, as a test. Can you stand in front of your family and community and tell a story, ask a question, teach us? And that connects to the tribal, indigenous rites of passage that we have in all traditions and that we now know about as we learn from so many cultures along the spectrum of civilization and the many, many options. So we've been doing this work for quite a few years now with young people, and the results are fantastic, whether people are Jewish, informed, not, they feel empowered to be who they are, to know more about their family, to stand up a little taller and have the community hold their back as they become storytellers of their own lives. And the personal story meets the communal story and the traditional tribal story. In the last few years, we've taken this device of inviting young people to come of age as adolescents and brought it to people 65 plus, and brought it to a group of people who were between 25 and 55. With this invitation of coming of age at every life stage, how do we use what we already have and reclaim it and reimagine it? So a group of folks, and Stuart can talk more about it, he was one of our pioneers. We're transparent here and we're all in the same big family. Took a year, really a year and a half, to be in small groups, to think together about ethical wills, about how do you make your life purposeful, how do you value a life, and then took a story from the Torah and as a group learned how to be the storytellers who ask big questions, who think about big ideas, and co-create an initiation ceremony in the context of community of family and friends who were there to celebrate a marking of a growth. How not just to become older, but to become an elder. We've done this twice. We're now in the third year of doing it, and we're learning a great deal about how to serve this moment, these different needs of someone in 60s and 70s, 80s, or 90s. What are the different questions we bring? Where is the spirituality there to give our lives deep meaning making? And where is the excitement about retrieving a connection to one's Jewishness? Where is the opportunity to be giving back, to not just think about what am I getting out of it, but how am I giving back? How am I an elder? I think one of the things that we heard in this morning's keynote, if folks over 65 spend an average 47 hours a week watching TV, and 76% of people don't volunteer or give back to the community, TV could be great, but how can we switch that? How can more people feel activated about being the leaders, the actors in people's lives, the mentors, the teachers, and volunteer in so many ways? What we're learning is that what happens as we grow older, and I will say that 50s and middle essence moving forward, is that there is a letting go of some of the human doing, and there is more of an opening to human being. And whether that's playing golf with an eye on your father and your son, or figuring out a way to be a storyteller, to be a volunteer, to connect your commitment to love, to justice, to legacy in ways that you have the ability to do, and maybe a little more wisdom to do so as you become an elder. I'll pause in a minute. I'll say one of the texts that has been very inspiring for us comes from a lesser recognized Jewish elder by the name of Erich Neumann. Some of you might know as a Jungian psychoanalyst who started off in Berlin and ended up in Tel Aviv, died in the 70s. And he wrote a series of articles that have only come up in English and in Hebrew in recent years. And one of them is about what he called the homo mysticus, how from around midlife, the human being begins to be more open to the spiritual. And there's much we can say about that. I know that the good folks at the Modern Elder Academy are thinking a lot about that, and many of the projects we heard about today. But it has to do with us living a little longer. It has to do with us being less attached to the Narishkeit of stuff when we're very much younger. It has to do with us having a little more bandwidth for being open to the big questions. And what does it mean for us as impermanence becomes more real, as we want to live a rich life and die a meaningful death and get there without fear, but with a sense of purpose and being held and holding others. So some of the work we're doing, we started this project. I'm seeing this stuff in the chat. We started this project called Generate, which is really inviting folks 55 plus to be engaged in this cohort, and we're really just getting started with it. And the more and more we do this work about storytelling as a key element of coming of age at all life stages, storytelling allows us to access the soul.
There's so much more to say and to listen.
It's a great place to pause. Thank you, Laura.
Great place to pause. So now I'd like to invite Rabbi Ed Feinstein, who also needs no introduction, but you can check out his introduction on the announcements. Rabbi Feinstein.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Thank you to Amichai for, as always, beautiful depth and Torah, and to Laura for her guidance, and to the organizers of this this wonderful minyan, and to the wonderful Torah that we've heard this morning so far. I'd like to address not programmatic issues, although there's an awful lot to say. I'd like to talk about something a little more abstract. This year we celebrated the 50th yahrzeit of Abraham Joshua Heschel, and I spent the year studying Heschel, teaching Heschel to my community, in addition to putting together a new program for us elders. Heschel in 1965 published a wonderful, tiny little book, which is worth reading, based on some lectures he gave at Stanford University. The book is called Who is Man? Please excuse the sexism of the title. And in the opening chapter of the book, he offers just a remarkable observation. He says, what if our whole civilization is based on a misunderstanding of what it means to be human? What if we've built an entire culture with a misunderstanding, with an inaccurate picture, an inaccurate portrait of the human being and of what human life ought to be? And I think that our experience together as older adults, reaching this part of our lives and looking forward to the next period of our lives, betrays exactly that truth. I have found in my experience as a rabbi in a community, all truth for rabbis doesn't come from Torah, it comes from lunch. From the lunches I've had with my friends and congregants who sit with me, wonderful people, intelligent, deep, wonderfully accomplished people who were talking to me about their frustrations and their difficulty and their confusion, about trying to figure out, what do I do with this time of my life? Now that my full-time working life is coming to an end, or has come to an end, my children are grown and into the world, what do I do with this time of life? American, as we heard this morning, America, modernity has given us a blessing. It's given us an entire new age of life from 65 to 90, but it hasn't given us a map. It hasn't given us a sense of what to do with these years. And I'm finding that what happens at this time is that this time of year, when you finish your full-time working life and try to figure out what to do with this gift of longevity, it points to the lies at the heart of our culture, the lies about what life is for. Let me just list quickly 6 of them. Number 1, the lie of identity. You are what you do. You are what you do, especially for men, I have to tell you, at least men of my generation. 2 fellas meet each other at a cocktail party, and after you exchange names, what do you do? What do you do isn't, I'm a gardener, I love opera, I'm political. What do you do means I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a rabbi, I'm a professor, I'm a business executive, because what you do puts you on a social grid. It gives you prestige and position and power. And all of a sudden you lose that when you stop doing that sort of stuff. So the first problem is a loss of identity. Now it's interesting because Because the question is, is that really what you are? Is that really who you are? And it's related to the second lie, which is that career success is the source of our greatest happiness and fulfillment. I mean, that's what they whispered to us when we went off to college. That's what we whisper to our children when they go off to college. Do well so you can be somebody. Is that really what we are? Every rabbi will tell you that no matter how many funerals we officiate, we've never heard a kid get up and say, I'm so proud of how much money my parents made. They don't talk about what they have. They talk about what they gave. As David Brooks talks about eulogy values as opposed to resume values, about relationships, about being a loving father and caring mother and a member of the community and a friend and a creative soul. But having given up career, we bump into this sense of inadequacy that I'm not producing anymore. And therefore, what is the source of my happiness? The third lie, adulthood means self-sufficiency. Adulthood means independence. That the greatest sin of American adulthood is to either be dependent on somebody or to allow somebody to depend on you. I remember here in Los Angeles, you have to drive a car or else you have nothing. And I was standing in line at the Department of Motor Vehicles, and there was a poor elderly gentleman who had just failed his eye test 3 times. And so the clerk was about to take his driver's license away from him. And the poor man was weeping out loud, saying, what am I going to do? Who am I going to be? Where am I going to go? How can I live without my car, without a driver's license? And the idea is that if he had to call a friend, if he had to call Uber, if he had to depend on somebody, he would be diminished. But one of the things that growing older teaches you is that we need each other. We need each other for everything. And the lie of self-sufficiency now becomes so painfully evident. The fourth lie is life is a linear journey. It's from here to there. And you're going from beginning to education, to middle age, into old age. You move to leisure world, you wear polyester, you eat at Denny's at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you die on the 14th hole of the golf course. Life isn't a linear journey at all. Life is a wandering about. In fact, that's the dilemma we're all having now, that life gave us a map. The culture gave us a map for every moment of life up till now. We knew what it meant to be teenagers. We knew what clothes to wear, what music to listen to, where to hang out, who to have fun with. We knew what it meant to be young adults, young professionals. We knew what it meant to be parents. We knew what it even meant to be middle age. No one tells us what to do with these years. There's no map. And we have this sense that somehow there's a way, and I'm supposed to know what it is, and I don't know what it is. And it's supposed to be linear, and it's supposed to get me somewhere, and I don't know how to get there. We're in the book of Bamidbar in our Torah reading during the course of the year now. And if you read anything from the Torah of this 4th book of the Hebrew Bible, it's that no journey's ever linear. It's always about the detours, the wandering, and the people you meet along the way. That's the 4th lie. And the 5th lie is that inside of, this is the lie that Joseph Campbell taught us, that inside of all of us is our bliss, and all we have to do is follow our bliss. Well, I got news for you. It's not my bliss. It's sharing life with my wife and my kids, with my community, with my friends. My truth doesn't come, it's not self-generated. My truth is in dialogue with a tradition that came before me, with the community in which I live, with the future that I aspire to, with the ideals. It's always a dialogue, and it's never settled. There is never a single Torah of me that's finished. It's always an ongoing story that has to be written and rewritten and rewritten again. And I'm always consulting who came before me, and I'm always talking to those I share life with, and I'm always trying to move forward. And the last lie, Heschel taught us too. Heschel taught us that modernity has conditioned us to imagine that time is money, that time is turned into money and power, accomplishment, that time is turned into space, into things. Well, that's what modern culture. Heschel taught us to sanctify time, to learn how to hold on to moments. It was the great Mark Twain who said, I don't understand why so many people want immortality when they don't know what to do with a rainy Sunday afternoon. The problem of longevity is that we have all this time and no sense of what the hell to do with it. Perhaps the wisdom is the great wisdom of the great Jewish sage, the Rabbi James Taylor, that the secret of life is enjoying the passage of time and learning what to do with time and learning how to hold on to moments and learning that there's no such thing as boring. It's just a question of what you're doing at the moment and paying attention. Learning how to deal with time is part of learning how to deal with old age. What I'm suggesting is that this is a spiritual crisis, not just a social and a medical and a communal crisis, but it's a spiritual crisis that calls upon us to reimagine our whole notion of what it means to be human, of what it means to be alive. And in that sense, it could be a revelatory moment, a moment when a new truth is revealed. We'll do it together. We'll do it communally. We'll do it collectively. We'll make mistakes along the way. But at the end of this process, we will share with the generations that come after us a great new Torah, a great new truth about what it means to be alive.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Amichai. There's just so much more we could talk about. And I hope that going forward into the future, we'll have opportunities to really continue this conversation. But now what I want to do is introduce two new and important tools that we don't necessarily all know about. So first, I'd like to ask Eileen Levinson of ReCustom to share with us very briefly some of what's happening at ReCustom.
Thank you, Laura, and Rabbi Ed, Rabbi Amichai. So great to learn from you. I'm really struck by this idea of the great new collective Torah and Jewish wisdom that we're putting together. I am not a rabbi, but I am trained as a designer, so I'm going to give you a little bit something visual to look at. So ReCustom is a new platform. It's an online space, and I invite you all to check it out. And we empower individuals with accessible, easy to use, sophisticated design tools that grow their capacity to create and share moments of meaning and connection through home-based Jewish rituals. We heard from Sarah Eisenman how so many Jews are finding that they're not connected in their synagogues, or they're not connected to a synagogue at all. And yet Judaism is important. It has so many tools for us to connect and create wisdom and mark these moments in our lives. And so we're creating a community of meaning and care to help you make Jewish rituals your own and welcome what life brings. And we're honoring the voices of the great rabbis and thinkers in our community, as well as the wisdom of all of us. And so, and I will say, I'm going to share this presentation with you since I know this is very short. And you might have heard of one of our products. It's called Haggadot.com. Started that years ago. And this idea of DIY, mixing and matching your own rituals, really came from that. You know, so many of us have this experience of cutting and pasting to make your own Passover Haggadah. We started this platform, and over 500,000 Jews annually have been using it, hearing so many voices from across the Jewish world. And ultimately, our community asked for more ways to create their own Judaism and make it their own. And so now we're looking at ritual for everyone, for all sorts of Jewish holidays, for life moments, for the rituals that don't yet exist. Going into daily rituals, seasonal rituals, really how do we tell our family stories? And we do that through our technology platform and also technology that we offer to partners, including LabShul, and you'll hear from Amy, our partner at OneTable, that we're excited to work with. And we offer content that anyone can upload to our central library and share their voice. It's moderated, of course, but we want to hear all the different ways that people are being Jewish and making rituals. We host webinars. We teach our ritual making methodology and through various courses, and we have partnerships throughout the community. And ultimately, we envision a world where everyone Every Jew, everyone who's Jew curious, can find vital sources of connection and meaning, no matter what life brings. And we thrive in partnership to create, adapt, and explore rituals from timeless traditions and beyond. So I'm joined by my colleague, Rebecca Missel, our Director of Partnerships here, who I'm sure would love to hear from your organization about how we can work together to promote your content or make our technology available for your community. And ultimately, when we celebrate that there's no right way to ritual, there's obviously a wealth of resources that we can pull from. But when we give ourselves permission to mix and match and make Judaism our own, the possibilities really become endless. And we can create this very rich Judaism that is collective, that is multi-layered, that, as Amichai said, it reflects our legacy, our history, it involves our storytelling. It makes our collective experience so much richer. So I encourage you to check out ReCustom, where intention meets play. We have obviously materials for active aging rituals, for preparing for end of life, for just honoring the seasons. And it's just so great to be here and share with you.
Thank you very much. And now, Amy.
Hi, everybody. I'm so really humbled and honored to be here in this group on this panel today, and also have just learned so much so far today. So thank you so much. I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to start with this quote. OneTable has given me the opportunity to explore what Shabbat means to me and has forever created a positive impact by opening my world to endless possibilities of connecting to Shabbat in a spirited, social, and religious way. So as many of you might know, OneTable was originally designed for people in their 20s and 30s who are craving social connection and meaningful Shabbat experiences on Friday nights. Through our online gathering platform, we empower people to find and share and enjoy Shabbat dinner, changing their Friday nights into something truly transformational. So far, we've been able to support the Shabbat practice of over 200,000 unique individuals in more than 600 cities. So why Shabbat? As we've talked about here today, in many ways, in Jewish tradition, the world is created in an evolution of 7 days, 6 days of work that culminate in the 7th day, Shabbat, a day of rest. Shabbat is not a postscript. It is an important part of bringing the world into being as any of the days of active creativity. Our founder and CEO, Eliza Klein, says Shabbat is her oxygen. Shabbat provides a weekly oasis from the chaos of the world around us and a weekly invitation to renew and refresh. At OneTable, everything we do is rooted in the ancient wisdom of Shabbat. So we hear all the time from folks 55 and above saying, what about OneTable for me? And we started to look at the data. So similar to what we heard from Sarah, we know that Jews 50 and older are really minimally involved in Jewish community. Based on the recent LA study, we also know that only 23% of adults are marking Shabbat weekly. On the OneTable side, we recently completed an impact study of our users, and we learned that 75% of OneTable users said that they would not be celebrating Shabbat if not for our program. We also know that OneTable helps strengthen existing relationships and to build new ones. And so we asked ourselves, how might we create a deeply connected community of older adults nourished by the wisdom of Shabbat to navigate all of what we've been talking about here today? So we created what we are now calling temporarily Together at OneTable. We think that that name might change. This is a new offering that expands our brand, allowing us to test the successful platform of OneTable platform into other populations who want ways to connect just as much as young adults. So I'll take just a minute to show you how it works. Meet Carol. Carol might be your neighbor or your colleague. She might be living in your community for a while. Like so many of us, she's really looking to reestablish community coming out of COVID. So she heads over to gettogether.onetable.org, where she can view all the Shabbat dinners that are happening in her area. For some people, they want to be a guest at a Shabbat dinner first before they host. Some people are ready to host right away. Carol decides she wants to guest first, so she reads through all the dinner descriptions until she finds one that's a good match for her, and she requests a seat at the table. Carol goes to the dinner, she meets new people, she makes new connections, and she really loves having the time to intentionally unwind at the end of the week. Now she's ready to host her own dinner. The dinner creation platform, the dinner creation page on our platform really encourages hosts to think intentionally about each piece of their dinner, not just the start time and end time, but really the dinner description is a super important element for us, where hosts can share all of the details of their Shabbat intention that they are trying to create. OneTable is built to support users like Carol on their Shabbat journey, to lower the barriers that often prevent us from actually getting together, and provides the structure and support to hosts and guests at every step of the way. I just want to close with this amazing, oh, wait, I want one more thing. I want to close with this, but also just say that we are so incredibly, let me just go back. Excited to share that we are currently supporting prototype dinners around the country, and we'll be piloting together at OneTable in a number of communities this year with the generous support of, as Sarah mentioned, the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County and the Jewish Federation of Atlanta through their Innovation Fund. Okay, now I'm going to close with this amazing excerpt from a conversation that I had just last week with Robin Kurz of the Jewish Federation of Buffalo. She says, every Friday, I'm so sad. The kids are gone and we are all alone. When I thought, what would happen if every Friday we had a different group over for dinner? We're all in transition, new to town, want community, widowed. It's just like the younger people you're working with, just the faces are different. I've been having Shabbat dinner since age 21, but change can be really hard. You might think that people this age are self-assured, but people in this demo don't want to do something by themselves. Going somewhere where they don't know anyone is like kindergarten all over again. I can't believe Together at OneTable is just the concept that's been on my mind. So whether Together at OneTable is the concept that's been on your mind for a while, or you're thinking about Shabbat for the first time today, I really do invite you to Shabbat with us. We are currently fielding a market research survey so we can understand the trends and habits of this age demo. I invite you to complete the survey and also to please share it along to those that you know. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And my challenge to get together once OneTable figures this challenge out, and I know that it will, and we in Los Angeles are ready to partner with you through Amichai Village LA and the Synagogue Village Network. Imagine the possibility of a co-generational option as well. How wonderful would that be? So thank you all. This has been incredibly moving and important, and really just the beginning. If I had time, I'd ask all of you to reflect on a question. How can attention to this spiritual income reframe the paradigm of aging from one of decline to one of opportunity, while still being truthful about the challenges of growing older? That's a question that we need to deal with. I'd want to talk more about new ritual, creating rituals that mark the moments that matter in the transitions of our lives. This has been so important to me for such a long time. I'm actually working on a book with my colleague Beth Lieberman called Moments That Matter that will deal directly with this. And though we said at the outset that this is not about programs, I'd ask you to reflect on how Jewish clergy in particular can encourage people to notice these moments, and through noticing, create the kinds of communities that can enrich our lives. So when Rabbi Feinstein sees the person who is crying because he can't drive anymore, if there were an acknowledgement in a synagogue that at some point we can't drive anymore, what does the synagogue do to make it possible for people to drive? So that it's owned by the community. This is not an individual issue. This is a communal issue. And how can our clergy, what kinds of rituals, what kinds of possibilities ought we to be thinking about that can help us create the kinds of communities that will enrich our lives? Now, we don't have the time to have this conversation now, but if you put in the chat that you're interested in continuing the conversation and maybe including smaller gatherings around some of these issues, please indicate that in the chat, and eventually the Active Aging Network folks will get back to you and figure out how we can move forward. I'd also love to talk more about the other tools that our tradition offers: ethical wills, forever letters, end-of-life conversations with adult loved ones, Musar, lifelong learning. all the things that I know that you all are involved with, and sharing those possibilities with each other is important. So a word of conclusion. This week's Torah portion is Shlach Lecha. It begins at a moment of transition. You know the story. People have come to the edge of Canaan, the promised land, and God tells Moses to send 12 leaders, heads of the people of Israel, to scout out the land with this instruction: go up there into the Negev and onto the mountain and see what kind of country it is. So you know that these scouts spend 40 days in the land, and they bring back to Moses, Aaron, and the community word that the land is beautiful. It does indeed flow with milk and honey, but 10 say, you know, it consumes its inhabitants, and all the people in it are giants. In our eyes, we look like grasshoppers, and so we were in their eyes. Only 2, Joshua and Caleb, trust that it will indeed be the promised land. Well, they all saw the same thing, challenge and possibility, but how they responded was different. Active older adults are also in transition at this new stage of life. We don't know what will lie ahead. What are we looking for in this land that lies before us? I'm really struck by Jess reminding us, are we comfortable being in the wilderness of not knowing? A Hasidic commentary suggests that the scouts with the negative report were looking for the wrong things. Moses is charged to go up into the mountain and see the land, what it is, that it actually meant when you reach the highest levels of wisdom, you will see what the land is. You will see what really matters in life. That's what you need to look for. And that is the essence of the spiritual income that all of us need to pay attention to. Thank you all so very much for this really wonderfully rich discussion.